If you've ever bought a course, you know that there are two types of course creators. The set it and forget it course ghoster, who disappear after you pay, and the helicopter parents who spam your inbox daily. But what if I told you there's a third option for accountability that actually works? I'm Dr. Catrina Mitchum, and I've been designing and redesigning courses online since 2009. So why are these two kind of polar opposite situations problematic? What we see is course creators either over-monitoring or completely neglecting accountability. Daily check-ins are too much, but set it and forget it lets your clients slip into the ether of digital course dust. People respond differently to different accountability methods. For example, some people like to commit to things out loud. Some people like quietly tracking things on their own and then celebrating when they get there. And so the key is accounting for different ways that people like to be held accountable. For the course police, a lot of times those daily check-ins are generic, right? And generic check-ins can feel impersonal and really easy to ignore. Can't tell you how many times I've had daily check-in emails for a program and I ignore them because I know that they're not actually tailored to me or what my accountability needs are. You kind of fall into this how's it going syndrome. And I've done this. I have had not courses, but products or guides that I've followed up with just a how's it going instead of being really specific about what is in the guide and how I know people struggle with it at different points or celebrate how things are going. We also can have the problem, if we're acting like the course police, of too much pressure creating resistance. Think about your inner angsty teenager, right? You feeling your freedom threatened and you must resist, right? And so we come up against this psychological resistance of if you're acting like the course police and doing too many check-ins and they're all generic, your client feeling like, well, I don't want to do this anyway. Why are you pressuring me? I need to do things on my own time. I don't have time for this anymore, right? They start to come up with reasons and excuses for why they're not jumping in. And it's in relation to feeling pressured and feeling shoulded. Pressure can lead to leaving. Like, did you do it? That can lead to guilt and judgment when the answer is no. And there is a connection between negative emotions, like guilt and shame, and learning and motivation. And clients start to develop this shame spiral, right? Of you say, did you do it? And they say, well, no. And they start to feel guilty and shame. And then they don't want to jump back in, right? Because they feel like, well, at this point, it's a lost cause. Pressure can also lead to feeling like they need to be perfectionists, right? They start to fall into this trap of all or nothing. Standards are too high. I can't catch up. We're moving too fast. I don't know where to start. I don't know where I left off, right? All of these things that can make it difficult to stay engaged, stay involved, or if you did drop off, get back engaged. And another way that pressure leads to leaving is a cognitive load. So accountability that requires, too much thinking can actually have the opposite effect, right? If they're spending too much time being accountable, they're not spending enough time doing the things that they need to do in order to reach the goal of the course. Okay. On the opposite spectrum, we have the folks that ghost, right after you purchase. And so without any kind of accountability, people start to prioritize other things. You are teaching adulting adults. When there are competing priorities, the path of least resistance is where they're going to go. So immediate deadlines are more important. Life's, right? The kid gets sick. The job has a deadline. Things happen. When there are competing priorities, they are also more likely to not have grappled with the things that suck their time, right? And so if you are just accepting payment and then leaving them to their own devices without giving them some guidance on like how much time the course is going to take and trying to keep them accountable, it can be easy for them to not work on your course. Mostly because when things are out of sight, they're often out of mind. And so if you are not reminding them that they have access to this thing and that they were trying to work on this goal, it can be easy to put it on that shelf. When you are not offering clients accountability in your course, they also run up against decision fatigue, right? And so they can struggle with the when and the what and the how to get involved and engaged, or stay involved and engaged, or get re-involved and re-engaged. And this is also connected to how courses get pushed to the someday or the later or the I'll get back to that, right? And so some ways that happens specifically are that people underestimate how long things are going to take, right? So time is a really big factor here. Clients can also overestimate their motivation, right? A well-designed course can motivate someone to keep going. When somebody initially signs up for a course, they're very motivated. But when things start to get a little bit challenging, they can start to fall off. And that is where accountability comes in. Courses can also get pushed to that digital shelf when it's not clear on what they're supposed to do next or where they're supposed to go next in the course or program. And lastly, perhaps more importantly, is the fallacy of sunk costs, right? So if they feel like they've failed, it can be easier to give up than to try to get re-engaged. And that is another spot where the accountability, not the accountability police, can help folks to jump back in and re-engage with the course. Okay, so what are some practical fixes for, making sure that you are being that third option, that you're not ghosting and you're not policing? First, you can create tiered accountability options that your clients can choose from. You can let them tell you how they want to be held accountable. So you can do things like create a customizable engagement quiz where you're asking them, how do they like their accountability? What flavor? What things would be helpful? You can have self-selected levels of accountability already baked into your course. Let them pick, and then you dump them in that bucket of this is how you hold them accountable. You can also have different options for progress tracking. The second thing that you can do is design kind of community accountability that doesn't just rely on you. You can have options for different types of groups, for different types of support. You can have accountability partners. You can have asynchronous video updates and spotlight successes. And this sense of community can help keep people accountable in your course. You can implement strategic check-ins at very specific drop-off points, right? So you know your shit. You're an expert in this. You know when people start to become disinterested, demotivated, start to struggle. These are really good places to have check-ins. And they don't have to just be re-engagement check-ins, right? They can be celebrations. So you can celebrate specific milestones that you know they've just accomplished. You can have personalized re-engagement messages at those critical drop-off points, at the spots where you know people start to struggle. You can have back on track resources like a catch-up quiz or catch-up paths. You can have visuals of the progress that they've made, and that can be, often, because I talk about this in terms of learning journey, it can be a path that they're following, and you can mark off where they are and then what else they're going to be doing and highlight that goal that they're working toward. And you can also offer the just-in-time support. So at those strategic, predictable drop-off points, you can offer extra support at that time. You can also use technology to help you with accountability, right? So you can have auto check-ins that pull in client-specific actions. You can gamify it. You can add badges. You can add rewards for completing specific parts of the course or getting to certain points. You can do things like create different sets of calendars, and each calendar is set out with deadlines based on how quickly they want to move through things or how much time they think they have each week, right? And so they can click on it and add that calendar to their own calendar based on what their needs are, what they're expecting, what they know their life is like. You can also, and we've talked about this a little bit before, boosting motivation with psychology, right? And so this is about walking them through what their intentions are and how to implement their intentions. So when and where and how they'll do the work of the course. Here's what you've done so far messages, right? If you can't get them, celebrate, then you celebrate them. You can have stories of how others have overcome the obstacles at very particular points. And examples are really good here for my, previous clients were struggling with this. This is how this particular step helped them work through that. Those things can all be motivating. And lastly, we want accountability that is supportive and not shaming. So do curiosity-based check-ins, reflective, right? Instead of guilt-producing. That can be something as simple as, what wins have you had? Doesn't have to be related to the course. What wins have you had? What course wins have you had? You also want to create a space where there's no shame in the re-entry, right? So if someone has put down the course and they're interested in picking it back up, you want to make sure there's a clear path to rejoining. And rejoining, make it a common thing. Make it a cultural aspect of your course that, hey, people drop off and then people come back. And this is how they pick things back up, because picking it back up can be harder than signing up in the first place, right? And so if you're coming at it from that perspective, people are more likely to admit when they've dropped off and ask for help and pick one of the paths. And if they don't work, say, hey, these paths don't work for me. How else can you help me? You want to create a space where that is safe to do. Celebrating the effort and the progress, not the checkboxes, right? And this can be a really hard distinction to make. And this is why doing reflection is really important. And I talked about that in the assignments video last time, but making sure that you're celebrating even the failures. What are you learning from the failures? What did you do? What did not go well? Let's celebrate that you learned something from it not going well. Supportive accountability also gives permission to adapt things to their lives, right? So you might have a specific framework or pathways that you're expecting them to go through and do all of these things, but having options for them to go to if those things don't work, or letting them adapt things to fit their lives is a really important part of supportive accountability. So a lot of times, accountability and not finishing a course comes from a place of shaming and blaming. But that just makes shit worse, so let's do better. If you want help looking at your accountability plan, grab a 30-minute session in the description. In my next video, we're going to talk about instructions. Because I don't know about you, but I have seen a lot of shitty instructions. I mentioned in the past that unclear and vague instructions are a huge hurdle to course success. It makes it impossible to engage because it leads to so much frustration. If it's not there yet, it'll be there next week.